You know, there's a question I've been hearing a lot lately, and it doesn't always come out directly. Sometimes it's buried inside a longer conversation. But when people finally say it out loud, it usually sounds something like this. We have around $450,000 saved up. We've worked hard for it. But my wife, she's been dealing with some health things. Or my husband, he's got a condition that's been getting more serious. And Medicare isn't too far away, but it's not here yet. And we're wondering, is it time to retire? Can we actually make this work? That's the question. And it deserves a real honest answer. Not a sales pitch, not hollow reassurance, not someone telling you you'll be fine without actually looking at your situation. So let's just sit down and go through this together, the way I'd walk through it with a close friend. First, I want to say something that I think matters more than any number I'll mention today. If you've been sitting on this question for a while, feeling a little ashamed that you don't have more saved, or feeling guilty that you're even thinking about money when someone you love is dealing with their health, that feeling makes complete sense. And it's one of the most common things I hear from people in your situation. There's this quiet tension that happens when a spouse gets sick or starts managing a chronic condition. You want to be present. You want to focus on them, on your time together, on quality of life. And at the same time, there's this voice in the back of your head that keeps doing math, keeps asking how long will the money last, and then you feel guilty for asking it. Let me be clear about something. That tension is not a character flaw. It's not a sign that you didn't prepare well enough. It's just life. It's the reality of retirement for millions of ordinary, responsible American families. Picture a couple. Let's say they're in their early 60s. One of them has a chronic condition. Maybe it's type 2 diabetes. Maybe it's a heart issue that requires regular monitoring. Maybe it's a back problem that's been slowly getting worse and has limited their ability to work comfortably. Nothing sudden, nothing catastrophic. But it's there every single day, and it costs something in energy, in appointments, in prescriptions, in worry. They've got $450,000 saved between their IRA, their 401a, maybe a little in a regular brokerage account. That is not nothing. That is decades of discipline. That is skipped vacations, packed lunches, and careful choices. They deserve to have someone look at that honestly. So before we get into the numbers, and we will, clearly, let's first understand exactly what we're working with. Let's start with the foundation. There's a planning guideline called the 4% rule. It's been around for decades, and while it's not perfect, it gives us a reasonable starting point. The idea is simple. In your first year of retirement, you withdraw about 4% of your savings. Then you adjust slightly for inflation each year. If your portfolio is invested reasonably, this guideline suggests your money has a decent chance of lasting 30 years. 4% of $450,000 is $18,000 a year. That's $500 a month coming from your savings. Now, $500 a month from savings is your portfolio's monthly contribution to your life. It's not the whole picture. For most people, the rest comes from Social Security. If you're 65 and claiming Social Security based on an average middle-class work history, you might be looking at somewhere between $500 and $2,000 a month. Some people more, some less. It depends on your earnings history and when you claim. So put it together. Fund $500 from savings. Let's say fund $1,100 from Social Security. That's roughly $3,300 a month. About $39,000 a year before taxes. Now, after taxes and Medicare premiums, that might realistically land somewhere around $30,000 to $33,000 a year in money you can actually spend. For a single person living modestly, maybe in a paid-off home, in a lower cost of living area, that number is tight, but it's workable. It's not comfortable the way people imagine retirement being comfortable, but it's survivable with discipline. For a couple, the math gets significantly tighter almost immediately because you've got two people drawing on that same pool of savings. And if one of you has a lower Social Security benefit, or if you haven't claimed yet because you're still in your early 60s, the income picture gets much thinner. And here's where I need to slow down and be very straightforward with you, because $39,000 a year before taxes sounds like it might work if everything goes to plan. And for some people, in some situations it does. But health costs change that picture in ways that most people significantly underestimate. And that's what we need to talk about next. I want to address a belief that I hear constantly from people across the country who are approaching retirement. And it goes something like this. Once I hit 65 and Medicare kicks in, I'll mostly be covered. Healthcare won't cost that much. I understand why people think that. Medicare is a genuinely valuable program, but that belief that it covers most of what you'll need is one of the most expensive misconceptions in American retirement planning. Here's the reality. Fidelity has been tracking retiree healthcare costs for over 2 decades. Their most recent estimate suggests that the average 65-year-old retiring today can expect to spend roughly $172,500 in out-of-pocket healthcare costs over the course of their retirement. And that's assuming Medicare Parts A, B, and D, and average health. That number has been climbing about 4% a year, year after year. And that figure doesn't include long-term care. Not a single dollar of nursing home or assisted living costs. Just routine medical expenses for someone in reasonably average health. Now think about what Medicare actually covers and what it doesn't. It covers a significant portion of hospital stays and doctor visits. It does not cover most copays. It does not cover deductibles. It covers some prescriptions through Part D, but with gaps, and drug costs can be substantial. It does not cover dental care. It does not cover vision. It does not cover hearing aids, which for a lot of people in their 70s and 80s become a real need. And it does not cover long-term custodial care, the kind of care someone needs when they can no longer manage daily activities on their own. Now take all of that and layer in one spouse who already has a chronic condition, regular specialist visits, ongoing prescriptions, maybe multiple, periodic hospitalizations that weren't planned for. The research is consistent on this. Retirees with 2 or more chronic conditions can spend anywhere from 5 to 10 times more out of pocket on medical expenses compared to someone in good health. Not twice as much, 5 to 10 times. There's research from the Employee Benefit Research Institute that puts real numbers on this. For a single retiree who wants a strong probability of covering their lifetime healthcare costs, they may need upward of $200,000 to $250,000 of their savings earmarked specifically for healthcare, not for rent, not for food, just for medical expenses. For a couple, particularly one with above-average prescription needs, that number can approach $469,000. I want you to sit with that for a moment. $469,000 dedicated to healthcare costs alone for a couple with meaningful health needs. And in our scenario, the total savings are $450,000. That's not said to frighten you. I want to be very clear about that. It's said so that you can see the full picture, because you cannot plan around a problem you're pretending isn't there. And knowing this gives you options. Not knowing it takes options away. Let me describe what this actually feels like month to month, because numbers on a screen don't capture it. The Medicare Part B premium comes out. That's automatic. Then the Part D premium. Then there's a specialist visit for the spouse with the chronic condition, and there's a copay. Then a prescription refill that landed a little higher than last month because the plan year reset. Then the car makes a noise that needs attention. And it's a Thursday afternoon and your grandchildren are coming to visit this weekend. And you just want to feel like yourself for 2 days, not like someone running a mental spreadsheet every hour. That's the reality. Not dramatic, not a crisis every week, but a constant low-level pressure, month after month. And here's something the research consistently shows that doesn't get talked about enough. Financial stress worsens health outcomes. Not as a theory, as a documented pattern. When people are anxious about money, they delay care. They skip the follow-up appointment because they're not sure what it will cost. They cut a prescription in half to stretch it further. They don't call the specialist because they know there's a copay. And those small decisions, made one at a time, each one feeling reasonable in the moment, can lead to more expensive, more serious problems down the road. And for couples, this adds another layer that almost never gets talked about openly. There is a quiet guilt that can settle into a relationship when one person's health is driving a significant portion of the household expenses. The sick spouse feels like a burden, even when their partner would never say that. And the healthy spouse carries a kind of silent financial anxiety they don't always feel they have the right to voice, because their partner is the one who's actually unwell. That tension is real, and it's heavy, and it's worth naming, because pretending it isn't there doesn't make it lighter. What I can tell you, and this comes from watching a lot of families navigate this, is that the couples who come through it best aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who sat down together, looked at the hard numbers honestly, and made a plan together, even an imperfect one, even one that required changes they didn't want to make. And that is exactly what we're going to do right now. I want to offer you a reframe, and I'd like you to hold on to this for the rest of our conversation. $450,000 is not a magic number that either works or doesn't work. It's not pass or fail. It's a foundation. And like any foundation, what matters is what you build on top of it. Your Social Security decisions, your Medicare plan choices, your spending habits, whether you work a little longer, whether you relocate, whether you convert part of your savings into guaranteed monthly income, whether you have a real plan for health shocks instead of just hoping they don't happen. Those are the things that determine whether $450,000 carries you through retirement or starts to crack under the weight. The couples who manage this well, and I've seen many of them, they didn't do it by hoping things would work out. They did it by being more specific than everyone else, more honest about the real numbers, more intentional about every lever they still had the ability to pull. So, let's talk about what those levers actually are. And let's start with what this looks like in 3 real situations. The first situation, a single person, 65 years old, $450,000 in savings, invested roughly half in stocks and half in bonds, Social Security of about $1,800 a month. They've got Medicare Parts A, B, and D, plus a basic Medigap supplement to help cover gaps. Their health is, let's say, mild to moderate, a couple of manageable conditions, above average prescriptions, gross income around $39,000 a year before taxes. After Medicare premiums and taxes, realistically $30,000 to $33,000 a year in their pocket. That's $2,500 to $20,700 a month to live on. It's possible, but it's lean. It requires a modest lifestyle, no major travel budget, a disciplined approach to spending, and, critically, some kind of contingency plan for bad health years. Because one hospitalization, one expensive drug added to the regimen, can quietly wipe out a year or 2 of planned withdrawals. It's a possible retirement, but without much forgiveness. This person needs eyes wide open and a backup option ready. The second situation, a couple, early 60s. They have $450,000 combined. One of them, or both, has meaningful pre-existing conditions, higher cost medications, regular specialist visits. They haven't claimed Social Security yet because they retired early, so their income from savings, $18,000 a year, before taxes, before healthcare costs. For two people, and remember what the research estimates for a couple with above-average health needs, potentially $469,000 in savings needed just to have a strong probability of covering lifetime healthcare costs. With $450,000 total, this couple is, in a very real sense, below the healthcare buffer alone before they've paid for a single month of rent, utilities, or groceries. The honest answer for this situation: not yet, not like this. This is the situation where continuing to work a little longer, even one of them, even part-time, or relocating to a lower-cost area, or both, is not optional. It's necessary. And I know that's hard to hear, but it's better to hear it now than to run out of options in year 7. The third situation: someone who is 60 years old, $450,000 saved. Their health needs are real, above average, but they're disciplined about managing costs. They use telehealth. They comparison shop prescriptions. They stay on top of preventive care. And here's the key: they're willing to work until 68 or 70 in a capacity that doesn't worsen their health. Not a brutal second career, but continued income. During those years, the portfolio has time to grow, or at least hold, while they're not drawing it down. And when they finally claim Social Security at 70, they could be looking at $2,400 or more per month, significantly higher than claiming at 65. By the time they retire, that higher Social Security income dramatically reduces the monthly pressure on the $450,000. The math works considerably better. Not perfectly, but meaningfully better. This is the most realistic path to a sustainable retirement on $450,000 when health costs are already elevated. But it asks something of you: a few more years of patience and a willingness to accept that retiring right now may not be the optimal decision. Okay, let's get practical, because understanding the problem is only useful if it leads you somewhere. And there are real concrete things you can do, regardless of which situation feels closest to yours. The first one is to map your real annual spending. Not what you think you spend, what you actually spent last year, all of it. Housing, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, and separately every dollar that went toward medical, dental, vision, and prescriptions out of pocket. Add it all up. That total is your truth. And until you know it exactly, you're planning in the dark. The second is to understand your Medicare floor. Go to Medicare.gov and actually price out what parts A, B, and D will cost in your specific zip code. Then price a Medigap supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan. Know what your annual out-of-pocket maximum would be. This isn't optional research. This is the single most important number in your retirement budget when health issues are already present. Third, delay Social Security if you possibly can. I can't overstate how important this one is. Every year you delay claiming between age 62 and 70 meaningfully increases your monthly benefit. At 70, you could be receiving 70 to 80% more per month than if you'd claimed at 62. That's inflation-adjusted income, guaranteed for life. In a retirement where every other number is uncertain, Social Security is your most dependable anchor. Protect it by being patient with it. Fourth, stress test your plan against a health shock. Ask yourself honestly, what happens if, in year 3 of retirement, there's a major hospitalization? A new diagnosis that requires expensive medication? Does your plan survive that? If the answer is no, or you genuinely don't know, that's important information. That's where you need a contingency, home equity, a part-time income option, or a family conversation you've been putting off. Fifth, consider keeping a small amount of income coming in. not a full career. 10 hours a week doing something low stress, something that doesn't aggravate a health condition, something that simply covers the Medicare premiums and leaves the portfolio untouched. That changes the math quietly and significantly over time. And sixth, get a one-time review with a fee-only fiduciary advisor, not someone who earns a commission selling you products. A fee-only planner who you pay by the hour. One honest session where they run your actual numbers through real projection models can tell you whether your situation is manageable with adjustments, borderline, or genuinely underfunded. That one conversation is worth more than 100 hours of online calculators. None of these are magic, but each one is real. And the people who successfully navigate retirement on $450,000 with health costs in the picture, they almost always pulled at least 2 or 3 of these levers. Not perfectly, but with intention. Before we wrap up, there's one thing I want to share with you that almost never comes up in these conversations, and I think it's worth knowing about. Most people assume that having health issues is purely a financial disadvantage in retirement. And in most ways, yes, it is. The costs are real, and we've talked about them honestly today. But there's one specific situation where your health profile can actually work in your favor financially. And that's if you're considering converting a portion of your savings into a guaranteed monthly income, what's called an annuity. Some annuity products, particularly income-for-life annuities, will pay you a higher monthly amount if you have documented health conditions that affect your life expectancy. The insurance company's logic is straightforward. If they expect to make payments for fewer years, they can afford to make those payments larger. These are sometimes called enhanced annuities or impaired life annuities. This doesn't apply to everyone, and annuities are complex products that need careful evaluation, ideally with that fee-only advisor we talked about. But if you're already thinking about how to create more guaranteed monthly income from your $450,000 and you have documented health conditions, it is worth asking the question. Because assuming your situation is the same as a healthy person's may leave real money on the table. It's one of those rare moments where something that feels like only a burden might actually improve your options, if you know to ask. So, let's come back to the question that started all of this. Can you retire with $450,000 when health issues are already part of your life? And I'll give you the most honest answer I can. Sometimes, yes. With the right situation, the right Medicare choices, a modest lifestyle, and Social Security timed well, it can work. Not lavishly, not without discipline, but it can hold together. Sometimes not yet. Not in the current configuration. Not without making some meaningful changes first. And that's not a failure. That's just information. And information you can act on is far more valuable than false comfort. And sometimes, yes, but differently than you planned. Maybe with a few more years of part-time work. Maybe with a relocation. Maybe with a different Social Security strategy. Maybe with one serious conversation you've been avoiding. What I want you to hold on to is this. $450,000 is not nothing. It is a real foundation. Real people have built real retirements on it. But it asks more of you than a larger number would. More honesty, more specificity, more willingness to look at the hard costs without looking away. And if your spouse is dealing with health issues right now, or if you are, that is not a failure of planning. That is life. The question is simply whether your plan accounts for the life you're actually living. Not the one you'd hope to have, but the real one, the one that's in front of you right now, because that life is still worth planning for carefully. The couples I've seen do this well didn't do it perfectly. They made trade-offs they didn't love. They had some hard conversations. They adjusted. But they did it with their eyes open together. And that's available to you too. If today's conversation was useful to you, please share it with someone you think might need to hear it. A friend, a sibling, someone going through the same question. And if you want to go deeper on any of these pieces, Social Security claiming strategy, how to choose between Medigap and Medicare Advantage, or how to stress test your own retirement portfolio, we've covered all of those in detail right here on the channel. Take your time with them. There's no urgency. The right decision is the one you fully understand. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.